Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another episode of A View from Tracy's Point, and we're here to recap Welcome to Sweetie Pie Season 4, Episode 9, which was titled Finish What You Started. So in this week's episode, we're going to talk about Miss Robbie going into the studio, Tim deciding that he really needs to bring Chloe back into the business, and Jenae staying connected to the family. So let's get started. Miss Robbie is out in California, and Stephanie, takes her to the recording session. And her first song that she's going to record is called "What Will I Do?" And she says that she has taught the song to all of her family members over the years, and so it's really near and dear to her heart. Stephanie, she's really about her business, and she has assembled a team to help Miss Robbie realize her dream. And she has a vocal arranger who's going to help Miss Robbie perfect the song's lyrics and, the arrangement of the song. And then she has a live band, like Miss Robbie had asked for, that's going to do the musical arrangement, to match the music with the actual lyrics. And so the musicians are playing their arrangement for Miss Robbie, and she doesn't seem to be completely happy with what they've come up with. And I just need Miss Robbie to understand that things have changed, and whereas she hasn't been singing for the last 50 years, these guys have probably been performing for the last 50 years. So give them a little leeway, Miss Robbie, because they are the professionals and they know what they're going to do. And so I think that Stephanie, she's the consummate professional, and she just has a disposition about her where she makes everybody feel important and understand their roles to kind of like bring everything together. And so we finally get the music down, and it took them, I think Miss Robbie said, about 4 tries, after they all came to agreement on what the music arrangement should sound like. And so they have the music done, they have the background vocals, and now it's time for Miss Robbie to actually sing the song and get everything lined up. So as Miss Robbie actually when they were working on the background arrangements, it was Miss Robbie, Stephanie, and I called the woman Yoko Ono. I can't remember what her name was, but it seemed like it was Yoko something. But anyway, she's the vocal arranger, and so they didn't look too hot working on those background vocals, but they did sound good, so they did get those down. So now that it's time for Miss Robbie to lay down her portion of the song, her voice is cracking and croaking and everything else. And Miss Robbie says that it's the California air that has her voice all, dried up. But I'm thinking, Miss Robbie, it's probably your vocal cords that are a little rusty because, you haven't used them in a really long time, at least not at a professional level. So Miss Robbie says that, she's going to go home and get some rest and, come back the next day and hopefully she'll have it all together. So as Miss Robbie, is preparing to leave, she thinks about Tim, but then she says that she probably won't get to visit him because of the whole lawsuit thing that's going on. And I guess their lawyers are telling them not to talk to each other, which I think is really sad. So over at the Inglewood location, Tim is on the phone, and I think he was talking to Danielle, and they were talking about doing a soft opening for the Inglewood restaurant. Danielle, she's all excited and into the social media thing, and that's like the only language that she can speak. So after, Tim was talking to her and trying to get her to understand the logistics and that they need to hire people, they need to get the menus done and all of that, he finally decides that he may need to bring Chloe back because Danielle is all out of left field, trying to do that social media and promoting the opening, but not actually working to make sure that everything is functioning for the opening. Then we move over to the TJ spot, and Chloe shows up to let Charles know that Tim gave her her job back. And so Charles says that he has worked 9 days straight and he is so tired and he's glad that Chloe is back because now he can go home and get some rest. And then Chloe also lets him know that she's gotten her own place. So Charles is doubly excited because so now he has his apartment all to himself. But then he tells Chloe that, he hopes that he can come over and crash at her place and they hang out. But Chloe's like, no, because now that I have my place, I'm about to go find me a man. So back in St. Louis, we have a quick little scene with Jenae and little Timmy, and I can't believe that he is already preparing to start kindergarten. So it's the first day of school, and Jenae, she's getting him all ready and going over his routine and telling him what all the things are for in his backpack. And then when they get in the car, she calls Tim and they do like a FaceTime, so he can be a part of Timmy's first day. And then when she was getting ready to hang up the call, I swear she said that Timmy could call his dad later on, once he got out of school, to let him know how his day went. And I'm thinking, why does a 5-year-old have his own cell phone? Like, y'all just be doing too much right now with these kids. So we head back to California, and Chloe lets Charles know that she has to go to anger management class. And Charles wants to know if she thinks that it's going to work, so he wants to do a little role-playing scene. And he asks, and his first question to Chloe is about her mother and how would she describe her relationship with her mother. And immediately it becomes obvious that Chloe's relationship with her mom is a trigger, for her becoming upset and angry with people. And so Charles is trying to point out that, well, when you go see the counselor, they're going to be asking you questions like that, and you can't just be blowing up, but Chloe is still in denial that she's having any anger issues and that it's everybody else's fault that she reacts the way that she does. So Miss Robbie and Charles meet for tea, so they can catch up. So I'm glad, Charles at least gets to see Miss Robbie. Then Charles shares that, he's really tired and overworked, and he just really needs a break and to get some rest. And so Miss Robbie, she starts asking him about his acting and how he said when he got to California he wanted to pursue doing, some acting. And so Charles says that he's been meeting with some people, but Miss Robbie was like, okay, well, do you have your headshots? Have you met any people? Have you hired a talent manager? She's rolling it off, and Charles is like, well, I'm getting there, I'm on my way there. But I don't think he ever explained to Miss Robbie that his biggest fear is himself, and that he's afraid that he's going to flop in front of a bunch of people because his reading isn't up to par, as he put it a couple of episodes ago. So Charles tells Miss Robbie that Miss Jenae gave him a call and that she wants to know whose side Charles is on. Is he on Tim's side or is he on Miss Robbie's side when it comes to this lawsuit? But then Miss Robbie shuts it down real quick, and she's like, people should not be talking about this lawsuit, that it's not a family issue, it's a business issue, and that the family shouldn't be getting involved or feeling that they have to be on her side or Tim's side, and that they are going to let the lawyers work it out, and whatever the lawyers and the courts decide, then that's all that matters, and the family needs to just continue on business as usual. Ms. Robbie quickly changes the subject and, tells Charles all about, her singing and how she's in the studio and everything. And Charles is excited for her, although Charles just hasn't been himself, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with Andre's passing, but he just has seemed so down and out this entire season, and I hope that that's about to change for him, because he just looks so sad and overwhelmed in these past episodes. So he offers to come and see Miss Robbie the following day before she leaves, just to check in and see how she's doing. So we go to Chloe, and Chloe is at her anger management session, and the counselor sets it off by letting Chloe know that most people that come to see her usually don't think that they have a problem, but they've had to come to her because their outburst has caused a problem somewhere else. And, Chloe lets her know that the reason she's there is because of her mom's urging and her boss urging, basically telling her she doesn't have a job if she doesn't do it. So we learned that Chloe's biggest issue is that her dad went to prison when she was 7 years old, and he spent 15 years in prison. And she said that when he left, that her mom really didn't know what to do, didn't know how to take care of the kids, and so she became really overprotective and just pretty much smothering of Chloe, I guess because she didn't want to lose her too. And so Chloe says that she's mad because she felt like her dad was the only man that's ever loved her, and that he ended up abandoning her, so now she has issues, with other men that she meets. The counselor, explains to Chloe that her anger is towards her dad, and because she's never sat down and talked to him and explained to him how she felt and gotten a response from him, that she blows up at other people, and that's how she releases that frustration and anger that she's feeling. And Chloe says that, she's happy that she came, and she believes that the counseling is going to be beneficial for her. So Chloe gets a chance to try out her new coping skill because the counselor told her that, whenever she feels herself getting angry or upset, to ask herself, are you going to react to the situation or are you going to respond to the situation? So she's back at work and it's her and Chef Clark, and Chef Clark is telling her that the cornbread was made wrong. And Chloe was like, no, it's not. This is how we make it. And she says, well, Tim says that this isn't how it's supposed to taste. And so Chef Clark, wants to show them the recipe and how to make the cornbread. And so Chloe, kind of catches herself and then she asks herself, the question, and it seemed to work for her. And it helped also that Chef Clark is being really nice and professional and says that she wants Chloe to succeed. Chef Clark lets Chloe know that while she was gone, that Bruce was actually hospitalized, but he's home now resting, and that he was taken in because he was having chest pains and it was leading up to pneumonia. And so they have a brief exchange, about being overworked. And for a second, I saw the old Chloe coming out, but it only lasted for a second. And she pulled herself back. And Chef Clark was saying that nobody needs to be found on the floor of the freezer, because they've been working too hard or they didn't know, their body's limitation. And then Chloe adds that or home alone, passed out, and nobody, because they don't have anybody in their life. And so Chef Clark kind of gives her the side eye, but I'm thinking Chef Clark is probably lonely and Bruce is probably lonely, and I just think that those two need to go ahead and hook up because they would probably make a really cute couple, even though they fight all the time. But I think all their fighting is because they are suppressing their feelings for one another. Miss Robbie is back in the studio for her final session, and she's rested her voice and ready to go. And I guess Charles is her lucky charm because she wasn't doing too good. But then when Charles arrived, she was finally able to get the song out, and pretty much up to the point where Stephanie needed her to be for them to complete the track. We have a brief scene where Charles reminisces about Miss Robbie, singing the song with them growing up and how Andre was working with her on the song. And so, that sadness reappears within him. So, like I said before, you can tell that the death of Andre has really impacted Charles' life. And so Miss Robbie meets with Dolores, who is Holly Robinson Pete's mom, and she said that they met through Oprah and have developed like a really good friendship since then. And that Miss Dolores is actually a talent manager, so I guess it's going to work in Miss Robbie's favor. So she's telling Miss Dolores everything that she's trying to do with the singing and how she wants to put her song out and maybe go on tour. And so I love seeing how these older women are encouraging each other and saying keep doing what you love to do and don't let age get in the way. And so the conversation turns to dating, and so they decided that they're going to go on dating websites and try and set up some double dates. And I'm thinking, Lord have mercy, like are the older men out there ready for Miss Robbie and Miss Dolores? Because she's a spitfire also. Miss Robbie leaves Miss Dolores and goes back to her hotel room where she calls Jenae to ask Jenae about the online dating. And Jenae is like, Miss Robbie, like, you mean a hookup site? That's what those people do. They go on there, give all their information, get matched up, but it really just turns into like a hookup. Miss Robbie seems really surprised, by the information that Jenae is sharing. And she's like, she ain't trying to hook up with anybody, she just wants some companionship. So Jenae says she'll have to go online and check all this out and weed out all the nasty men. But Miss Robbie says that she wants a nasty man. She just don't want to have sex with him. So the show ends with Tim interviewing for the Inglewood location, and a mother and son come in, and we learn that the guy is on probation. And so I really have an issue with the mama being in the interview. Like, I could see if he needed a ride there, you bring him down there. But she was in the interview answering more questions than he was. But, Tim, I guess, understood because maybe Miss Robbie used to do the same thing with him when he was getting in trouble. So Tim says that, he'll try to work around the guy's schedule, with school and everything. But I'm thinking, like, he was a young guy, but he didn't look like he was young enough to be in high school. So I hope it was college classes that Tim was going to work around his schedule with. So I'm glad, Tim is going to give him a chance. But Mama, it's time for you to let your son walk on his own and make his own decisions. Miss Robbie meets with Stephanie to hear the finished product, and it sounds good, Miss Robbie. I'm gonna give it to you. So now let's see what those iTunes sales look like, and whether or not you need to go out on tour or even back in the studio and record a second song. But I am rooting for you. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Did you guys like Miss Robbie's song? And are you encouraged that somebody her age is still pursuing their dreams and haven't given up? Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will see you guys when I recap episode 10. Talk to you later. Bye bye.